Welcome back to my channel. I am Ashley, or you can call me Cisco, whatever you prefer. Today, I wanted to talk about something that has really been on my heart, and that is embracing your inner beginner. Or more bluntly put, allowing yourself to suck at things, especially things that you're just starting out. I've always been a perfectionist, and I've always been really hard on myself when things don't really live up to my expectations that are usually pretty unrealistic. And that usually left me feeling pretty disappointed and discouraged and let down pretty much every time I started anything new. That is if I got around to starting at all. The cycle was always get really excited about something, binge it, consume it, read books, watch content, obsess about it. And then if I ever actually eventually got around to starting, then I would start and then I would suck and then I would abandon ship. And then the cycle continued for every hobby and craft and thing that I have picked up in the last 15 years. I think a lot of that frustration stems from the fact that I was able to pick up on things really quickly in my youth. And I think a lot of us were. You know, kids are programmed to learn things faster. Languages, hobbies, sports, crafts, art, instruments, so we're literally programmed as humans to learn things and catch on to things faster as children. And we bounce back a lot faster as kids too. School came pretty naturally to me. I ran track and cross country for middle school, high school, even into college. And I was very fortunate to have a nice athletically inclined genetic cocktail. Thanks to my mom and dad, who were also runners. I really didn't have to push myself that hard all through middle school and high school as a runner. And that was until I got to college and I was a beginner all over again. And I didn't suck. I just hadn't trained over the summer like everybody else had, because all the other people that were in college running track and cross country, it was their lifestyle. It was what they lived for, and they literally woke up to do. Like, they were just die hard. And that was never me, because I never had to do the work to be top tier. But again, a whole nother level once you get to college. And I didn't like sucking. I didn't like feeling like I had to work really hard to get to that level. So I just allowed myself to quit. And, I look back on that time and I kind of regret it. But at the same time, I had had a 10-year stint as a athlete. And I think at that point I was just kind of over it. Around that time was when I started realizing that I was going to have to be a beginner at a lot of things. I was in college. I was out of the house. Things weren't just going to be handed to me anymore. And there was a lot that I was going to have to learn through trial and error. And I had a really hard time with that for a really long time, because up until that point, I had been really comfortable with not having to try that hard or starting things and picking it up really easily. I didn't know how to be a beginner. I didn't know how to suck gracefully. I didn't know how to enjoy being a beginner. So as I started getting older and the things that I became interested in required a lot more involvement, investment, energy, focus, concentration, that all started to change. And, some people get called lazy, some people get called slacker, whatever. Like, I definitely have been called those things, but a lot of it wasn't even so much that I was lazy. It was that I was overwhelmed. And there were things that I wanted to do that I mentally just couldn't get myself to push through and do it. At that point, and up until not that long ago, I was really uncomfortable with not being great at things right out the gate as soon as I picked it up. But how unrealistic is that? That's so unrealistic. And so many of us feel that way and think that way. So as I'm sure a lot of people have, fallen into the same rut, but I settled for very little. I settled for the bare minimum. I settled for not following the things that sparked my interest. And really being complacent and stagnant. I settled for doing very little. And I settled for doing the things that I was good at, but that didn't really bring me much joy or validation or fulfillment. A more recent example of this is this channel. I have had it at the forefront of my brain and on so many bucket lists and to-do lists and 5-year goals for literally 5 years, if not more, to start a YouTube channel. And it's taken me this long because I was afraid of sucking. I have recorded a first video 10 times. And I've scrapped each and every one of them. Every single time. Scrapped it. I probably still have them somewhere. I'll put together like a compilation. No, I won't. But I scrap it because it's, you know, I'm comparing it to videos from people that are years, sometimes a decade ahead of me. And like, that's any realistic comparison. Who am I to compare myself to somebody that has 100,000, 200,000, a million subscribers that's been doing this forever? Of course, my first video on my antiquated technology is not going to be up to that standard. Of course it's not. No matter how many videos I've watched, no matter how many blogs I've read, books I've read, podcasts I've listened to, I've never done this before. So of course I'm going to be new. Of course it's going to be awkward. Of course it's going to be a little lacking in some areas. And that's okay. That's okay. So to be honest, like, doing this video is it's mostly for me. It's mostly a reminder to myself that it is okay to suck. It is okay to not be perfect immediately. It is okay to go weeks or months with nobody even watching this freaking channel. Because that's the reality of it. Nobody's first video pops off. Nobody takes off immediately. And if they do, it's such a small percentage that that's not me. It's not going to happen. So yes, I'm recording this video as a reminder to myself, as much as a reminder to anyone that it's okay to be patient with yourself. Maybe you are also someone that tends to avoid things out of fear of failure or gives up quickly when things don't go as planned, or hold yourself to some unrealistic expectations. So if that is you, I want to tell you and remind you that it's okay to suck at things. It's okay to fail. It's okay to look like a beginner and sound like a beginner, because you are a beginner, because you're learning. So many of us spend a lot of our time ashamed of our freshness or our lack of skill or experience in a certain area, especially if it's something that you feel like you should have learned a long time ago, or you've been talking about for a long time, or thinking about or dreaming about. But you don't earn that experience without putting in the time. There are no shortcuts. No amount of watching YouTube videos or reading books is going to help you get to the place that you would get with experience. So many of us feel like we're too old or we're too late for starting something that we've always wanted to do, or that has always been appealing to us, or even something that's recently caught our eye. You might be putting off learning something because you feel like you're too old or you missed the window, but C.S. Lewis put it best. You are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. Barbara Sher also said, "You can learn new things at any time in your life if you're willing to be a beginner. If you actually learn to like being a beginner, the whole world opens up to you." And I love that one because it allows you to accept the fact that being a beginner is a natural part of the learning cycle. We each need to reframe our mindset. We need to focus on progress, not perfection. And it's not about being the best. It's about being better than you were yesterday. Yet we so often forget that when we're trying something new. It's easy to forget because in the moment, all you can think about is that moment. And like I said earlier, we compare ourselves to people that are so far ahead of us that it's just not even a fair comparison. The only person that it makes sense to compare yourself to is yourself. It's important to remind ourselves that being able to be a beginner is a blessing. It means that we aren't stagnating. It means that we want and desire to continue growing and evolving. It means we are pushing towards the truest version of ourselves, of our true self. When Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, this is what he said. "I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life." And I love that. Like, coming from Steve Jobs, who is a mastermind, a genius, and literally so many of us are walking around with like little pieces of Steve Jobs in our pockets, you know, like he was a beginner too, many times over in so many areas. Being a beginner is a natural part of the cycle of learning. And it's a crucial part of learning life lessons, things such as courage, patience, perseverance, resilience. It can also open up doors to new opportunities that wouldn't have otherwise crossed your path. So once you start one thing and it leads to another, and then maybe another, things that light you up that you had no idea were things that excited you, follow that rabbit. You have no idea where it's going to go. See where it takes you. New experiences are enriching. They sharpen our minds, and they keep us young at heart. Do it without caring how it turns out. Do it without caring how it looks. Do it because you're excited about it. Do it because it's fun. The you 1 year from now is going to be so grateful that you chose to be a beginner now. So I encourage you to embrace your inner beginner, to practice self-compassion, be patient when you make mistakes or when you fail, and remember that failure is a natural part of the learning process. As Shiryu Suzuki said, "The beginner's mind is the mind of compassion. When our mind is compassionate, it is boundless. So be kind to yourself and have fun, because that's literally what life is all about." Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for stopping in. Thank you for joining me at the beginning of my journey. I'm a beginner too. So if you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will give it a thumbs up, that you'll subscribe, and I'll see you when I see you.